Well, good evening. My name is Matt Smith, and I'm with Piedmont Advantage Credit Union, and I'm here tonight with Fitz McMurray. He is with us there at Piedmont Advantage through Piedmont Advantage Investment Solutions, and that is through CUSO Financial Services. And we are going to talk tonight about Financial Planning 101. So I hope you have come with questions. And if you don't have a plan, that's okay, because we have Fitz here tonight and he can shed some light on if you know a little bit, or if you don't know anything at all. You may be a seasoned vet at this, but that's okay too. Um, so we thank you for joining us tonight. I know as others sign in throughout the webinar, if you need to ask a question, since it's a small group, I'm just going to unmute everybody, and please feel free to ask questions. Stop us. And we'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Again, me and Elizabeth have got to know each other. I'm so thankful that she's here from Virginia. Esso and John, or John or Joni, where are you guys from? Oh, I don't know if I can. Well, well, okay. The cat's got their tongue. That's okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, well, we are going to move on then. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer button down here or in the chat. Please feel free, or if you choose to unmute yourself, definitely do that as well. Okay, well, Fitz, with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure thing, Matt. Thank you, sir.
You are welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name's Fitz McMurray, financial advisor here at Piedmont Advantage Credit Union. I was considering what to speak about earlier in the year when we had to choose which seminars we wanted to do. And in August, I'll be here for 4 years. So I'm approaching my 4-year anniversary, and I absolutely love it here. Great culture, great people, great members. Very fortunate and blessed to be here. So I appreciate the membership. When I was reflecting about what to talk about, I was thinking, well, what are the conversations I have a lot? Some of the previous seminars I've done have been very zoomed in on a particular topic and kind of like very specific to the topic at hand. And I said, well, I find myself having lots of just sort of like where to get started conversations. What do I do? How do I get started investing? Am I doing the right things? I'm lost. So I really do oftentimes find myself having these very 101 type conversations. So I was like, let's do one seminar, just financial planning 101. So however you're watching this, through whatever channel, or if you wind up watching it later, just keep in mind, everybody's background is going to be different. People of all different ages, all different financial backgrounds, different phases along the process. So this is kind of a generic presentation, but if you have questions about your specific scenario, just don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help. And we'll give you my contact information below, or I guess after the meeting. So like I mentioned, we're all from different backgrounds. And the one thing we all have in common is we want to have a secure retirement. You don't want to work your whole life and just be faced with 1,000 question marks about, am I doing this right? Am I going to run out of money? Am I going to be able to retire at all? So we're all working really towards a common goal, in my opinion, to accumulate as much wealth as possible, retire with no debt, and be able to have sufficient income to pay our bills when we retire. That's sort of the goal here.
Amen.
So yeah, I mean, really. So we all have that in common. And I say this a lot, but I think that like 90% of your likelihood of success is just simply having a plan and putting some things into place that aren't difficult. You don't have to be an expert in investments. You don't have to be super knowledgeable about any of this. But if you have the foresight in advance of your retirement to do some of these things, you can let time and compounding interest and frugal spending put you into a good place. So let's I think probably the best thing that I'll do is I'll sort of quickly go over, and whoever, if you have the ability to write this down or you know keep this in mind, this is sort of when I sit down and speak to somebody, this is the flow of the conversation when it comes down to a 101. I often find people who want to invest money, but they're not ready to invest because they might be carrying a lot of credit card debt or other things that need to be done before they really are able to invest. So let's get to, here's my contact info. But we'll pull that back up at the end. I'm going to move on to the next slide here.
Yeah, I'm recording this to everyone, so I'll send out a link after the webinar first thing in the morning, and it'll have Fitz's info in there for you.
Thank you, Matt. That makes it even easier. So what we'll do, so the first few things that you're going to see here are really like the preliminary things you need to do to get your ducks in a row so that you can start building wealth and investing and planning for your retirement. So before I get into the steps, the first thing I'll say is I think you should understand your financial situation. And what I mean by that is like take inventory of your assets. Like what investments do I have, if any? What do I have in the bank? All your various assets. Inventory that. Keep that in mind. Think about what your debts that you have. What interest rates are you paying on those debts? And now, also, this will be discussed in this presentation as well, but do I have an estate plan? You don't have to be a wealthy person to need an estate plan. Not every person or household needs a trust or a living trust. Some do. But in my opinion, everyone needs a will. It's not that expensive to put into place, and it can make things much more simple for your family members or whoever is going to receive your estate. So here's where whenever you're understanding your financial situation, I'll say this. One thing that most people don't have a grasp on is their spending. So most people know what they're making every month. They probably could tell you exactly after tax what their paycheck's going to be. But could they tell you exactly within a couple $100s of what their average monthly expenses are? Probably not. The reason why I think this is because I ask this question to people on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. And the vast majority of people, don't want to throw a percentage, but I'll say most don't exactly know. They'll say a number, but then when you dig a little deeper, oftentimes they think they spend way less than they actually do.
I know that is true.
I find myself personally sometimes doing that.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Fitz, sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned earlier that a lot of us don't know, what you're talking about, like what your assets are, and a lot of people don't understand or what to count as an asset. Or then you said what are your loans, what are your expenses, what's your interest rates on those. A lot of people don't know what their interest rates are on their credit card,
right?
Just things like that you don't think of on a regular basis. It's just good to take inventory of those. Like you said, the first step is just trying to understand your situation and where you are.
Right. People's personal finances are not much different than a business. You've got expenses, you've got income, you've got assets, you've got liabilities. So when you put all these things on paper yourself, you can do this yourself. You can look at your loans, you can put the interest rates when they mature, monthly payments, you can inventory your assets, you can do all that. And but I think once you understand what you're spending and what you're making, that's when you can really start making some headway. I don't think you necessarily have to do an itemized budget, but I do think it's important to really have a comprehensive understanding of what you're spending. Meaning, like, think about things you might just pay once a year or twice a year, like an insurance premium or some sort of dues, and divide that by 12 and add that to your monthly expenses. The things that you know you're going to spend, your fixed expenses, and then your variable expenses that you know you're going to spend. Go back over, my advice is to go back over 12 months, review all of your credit card statements, review your bank account statements, and identify the fixed expenses, the variable expenses you know you're going to have, and just look, it'll show you what you've spent that month. Just average it out, get an idea of what you're spending. And then spend less if you're spending too much. Real simple. But it sounds silly to say it that way, but it actually is simple. And everything we're going to talk about today is, in my opinion, pretty simple. So once you have an idea of your situation, my very first question is, what do you have set aside for an emergency fund? So if you've done what I said before, you've kind of inventory to see your financial situation, I think you should have 6 months of monthly living expenses set aside in a savings account. So you've already identified what you're spending every month. So make sure you have 6 months set aside. Don't touch it, forget it's there. My next question is, do you have a 401k at your current employer? If so, are you at least, if they offer a match, are you at least contributing their match? If they don't offer a match, well, maybe look at doing a Roth 401k, or at least give as much as you can, 6%, 7%, even 10% or more, whatever you can afford, but you absolutely need to contribute something. And the reason why I say that is because it's very surprising the amount of people that are offered 401ks at their job that I meet and have the privilege to help that do not contribute to their employer's 401k. And that is without question, maybe other than your residence, oftentimes more than your residence, the best way to build wealth in America is just contributing to your 401k, because it's a small amount of money every month. You don't miss it. Oftentimes you get a match, that's free money. And that's step number one. Then my next question is, do you have any sort of high interest consumer debt like credit card debt? If the answer is yes, so say you've got your emergency fund, say you're contributing to your plan, or at least you're setting, if your employer doesn't offer a plan, at least you're contributing to a Roth IRA or an IRA, some sort of tax efficient retirement savings. Then I'm going to say, if there's credit card debt, that has to be attacked first before any other money is set aside for the growth of wealth. Absolutely, without question.
Would you say to pay attention to that before you do your emergency fund?
Nope. Absolutely not. Emergency fund's number one priority. And what these steps I'm saying are like the things you'll see with, like, I don't want to mention any names, but like the most popular financial planners you would see on TV or YouTube. You don't necessarily have to wholesale agree with every single belief that some of those people have. But the most popular person I'm talking about, it's the same steps that you hear people talk about.
Right.
And that's just the gospel. That's the truth. I mean, you follow these steps, you'll be on the right path. It's that order of operations works. So yeah, absolutely. Because most important thing is like your livelihood. So the emergency fund is most important. And then you got to get started with it. You can't defer doing your 401k or some kind of retirement savings on a modest level. You have to get that started. But then the debt, got to pay off the debt. So that's where I'll say this. If you're a member, you have some consumer debt, meaning mostly credit card debt, just talk to one of our member experience teammates, one of our branch managers. They can help you put together a plan on how to attack that, whether it's just a strategy to pay off the debt as it is, whether it's consolidation, personal loan, home equity line, just whatever makes sense, but they can help you with that.
Yeah, anything that's going to get you down under that interest rate that you're at right now.
Right. So those are the three things. If you've got your emergency fund, you've got your 401k contributions, or you're contributing to a retirement plan, and you have no consumer debt, high interest debt, we'll call it, mostly credit cards, you're really at this point ready to start being strategic and investing every month, building wealth for yourself.
Now, hey, I got a question for you, Fitz. This is one where, like, I've been trying to follow the steps to develop to build an emergency fund, and I didn't know if you had any tips or tricks of the trade to arrive at that, derive at that number quicker. I know I've heard different things, so I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on the best way to arrive at that. I mean, I know I have, when I started at Piedmont Advantage Credit Union, a while back, I started putting away like $100 out of every paycheck, just because that way I wouldn't miss it. It was already gone, and I've started putting that into my checking account, and I've watched that grow. But there a way that you can do that quicker, or how would you recommend?
Well, automation is key. So it's funny that this wasn't pre-planned, but it is funny you asked that, Matt, because this very slide I'm on right here is kind of that. Pay yourself first. Now, granted that these slides are about 401k. Same principle applies to your personal savings. Automation is key. Just like automation is key in making sure you do your 401k contributions, it's also key to building up your personal savings. So do your cash flow analysis. Look at what's coming in income, what's going out in your expenses. The most important thing to answer your question would be just cut out all unnecessary expenses if you're super tight on cash. It's hard, but it's important.
Right.
And, there's really no sugarcoating it. This is where it's touchy. It's like, it's not, if you're in a tough spot or you're trying to get started, you've really got to spend less money. It doesn't even matter how much money you make too. I mean, I have the privilege of meeting people from every type of income level you could imagine. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, you can absolutely spend every dollar of it. So it's just a matter of just budgeting. I think it's gotten more acceptable almost to like carry credit, just like spend too much money. It seems more normal, but just focus on that. But yeah, I would say identify how much money you have left over. And before you do those fun things like expensive meals out, trips, whatever your thing is, automatically have some money being transferred into your savings. So, I mean, for most people, you spend $3,000 or $4,000 a month. You need, what's that? 20 grand, 20 something thousand in savings usually is a good number to have there.
Yeah.
But it depends on everybody's personal expenses.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so on this slide here.
Miss Elizabeth has a question there.
Sure.
Is there like a rule of thumb for how much you should be setting aside into that emergency fund? Like 5% of what you make, 15%, like how much should you be setting aside if you're still on this step one of getting 6 months worth?
That's a good question. It really is. And there's not an exact answer there, in my opinion, because I think the answer is just by all means necessary, just do as much as you possibly can until you have that number.
Just knowing how much you spend or how much like your
Right.
true expenses are.
Right.
That's what I've tried to look at too, Elizabeth, because I'm right there with you. I questioned, I listen to the radio all the time, and really I should just go to Fitz. He's right there.
Why don't you?
But yeah, like it's just knowing how much you spend or how much you've got, going out that's legitimate, and cutting out all the extras, and that way focusing, just on knowing what, 6 months of your, or 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, what that's going to be. So
Yeah.
that's what I tried to do on my end. I hope that helps, Elizabeth.
But basically, yeah, every situation is different. But yeah, once you know how, like, you can come pretty close to having a solid idea of, your positive cash flow, meaning how much, because I mean, for some folks, they realize their fixed expenses are more than what their income is. So then, no matter what you do, you're going to go in the hole. That's like work a second job. That's make drastic changes to your spending, but it does happen because some people literally have not looked at it. But the answer to that question is absolutely just as much as you possibly can. Because once you have that money in there, just do not touch it, because that is absolutely just the most essential key to getting started. Because that is going to keep you from using, that will keep folks from using credit cards. Really, I mean, once you have that emergency, then you're no longer using a credit card for an emergency. You're using your own money, and you're winning because you're not paying high interest for just things that you purchase.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, once you just think about automation early on, this is just using time and compounding interest to do wonders for you over decades. So pay yourself first. Use your 401k. Some employers, many of them now have Roth 401ks. Those can be great options as well. If you have more in-depth questions about this after you watch this, please contact me. I'm happy to help you. But set aside automatically money for your retirement savings. And when you do this slide shows you right here. It's called dollar cost averaging. That just means you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to, like, I mean, this is what I personally do. I'm a financial advisor. I don't try to time the market and decide the good time to invest or a bad time to invest, because the answer is, if you constantly invest at a steady rate, you'll capture a good average price of the stock market, and you're not making a bad decision on, is it a good time to do it or a bad time to do it. You just systematically always do it, and it'll work
I
out.
say that's probably the best thing to take away, is that don't be paralyzed to do nothing.
Right. Right. That's good. You're right, Matt. Absolutely. Yeah, this is just showing you, like, just as I mentioned before, just have a tough conversation with yourself if you need to, but live within your means. This right here shows you a credit card, $10,000 balance with 11% interest rate could take you 20 years to pay off. Well, good luck getting 11% interest rate on a credit card, because it's probably more like 25% right now.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
With the movement in interest rates in the financial market. So, I mean, that's like an easy example. Most likely now it's probably double that scenario. And just little things, just in general, I've noticed is that there's no need to upgrade your car every 5 years or even every 10 years. My personal opinion is like the Warren Buffett strategy, where you like drive the same vehicle for like 30 years until the wheels fall off. Now, granted, if you can absolutely, without any problems, afford to buy a brand new car every 5 years, do it. But most of us really can't. So just be willing to, like, not keep up with the neighbor down the street who has the flashy car, and just keep on doing your thing in your old car, because it'll be worth it in the long run.
True.
So estate planning, I'll touch on this one really quick. So estate planning is not just for the rich. Just think about what would happen to you, all of your assets, your coin collection, your vintage car collection, you name it, money in the bank,
I mean,
every
your house, your
asset,
land.
your house, your land, your children. If something were to happen to you, it's absolutely paramount that you have a will. This is like, there's things that don't pass through the will that act like little small trusts in and of themselves, kind of like a bank account, because then you can either let the bank account, when you pass, go to your estate, which will go through probate, the court system, or you can name a beneficiary. So that being said, here's what I'll say. Any sort of financial account, please right now make a note to see who your beneficiaries are. Talk to your financial institution, look at your 401k, make sure your 401k has the beneficiary that you want it to be. Make sure it's all signed and ready to go. Make sure your bank accounts have those and any other type of asset like that you can name a beneficiary to. That doesn't go through the probate. This goes directly to the person. And then everything else, all the other stuff that I mentioned, that's the house, all the other types of property, that's what goes through the estate process. And you can greatly simplify this for your family or loved ones if all this is written out in your will on how you wish everything to be distributed. For some folks that have a little more complex situations and more diverse assets, I'll say, a trust is a very good idea. Either way, a good estate planning attorney can help you decide whether a will or a trust is most appropriate for you. And if you need somebody, the credit union has a good contact. Granted, I'm not sure it's in the Winston area, but either way, we can help find somebody where you are. So also, make sure you have those ducks in a row, because I have firsthand seen some very sad situations where money has gone to a place that it wasn't intended because of not checking up to beneficiaries and wills and things like that. So make that note.
Well,
Never
too,
stop.
it's a great time to look at and everything, if you're looking at a situation of the transfer of wealth. I mean, you don't want the state to get everything that you've worked hard for. You could make sure that you're setting your family up for success for the future, because Lord of mercy, we need it.
Right. And also if you're approaching retirement or you are retired and you have children, how am I utilizing my assets in the way that it's going to affect my beneficiaries? Meaning it can be more strategic to spend down some things to leave less of a tax liability on your beneficiaries. There's things you can talk to a financial advisor like me about that, who can make sure you're approaching your sort of your spend down phase most efficiently. So now that we sort of went through those basic topics, once if I'm speaking to someone and they, like I mentioned before, they have their emergency fund, they're contributing to their 401k, paid off all their high interest debt. Usually the first thing I'll ask them most often is, are you contributing to a Roth IRA? Most Americans qualify to contribute to a Roth. There are caps on how much income you can earn. It's in the $150,000 range for an individual and $225,000 range for a married couple filing jointly. As long as you're under those income limits, you can contribute $6,500 a year if you're under 50, and $7,500 if you're over 50. And that alone, that's a Roth IRA, is as long as you have money in taxable income, you have to have at least that much in taxable income. But you can contribute to that, and that grows tax deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on the investment gains or growth or interest. And then as long as you're 59 and a half, when you take money out of it, it's tax-free income in retirement. And if you have a long time horizon, meaning say you're in your mid 30s and you do it till you're in your mid 60s, if you just put it in the market and invest, we'll say in index funds, like we'll get into a little bit later, it's really not far-fetched to getting to around $1 million if your investments perform kind of to averages. But generally speaking, you're going to have a nice large retirement savings from your own contributions and your growth if you do it for 30 years like that. So even if your time horizon is shorter, you got 15 years, you can still create a nice account for yourself of tax-free income to supplement your Social Security when you retire. It's never too late to start a Roth. That's usually the first question I ask. So when you do have some extra money, I think Roth is a great place to go. You can invest it in any way you can imagine. And then you start looking at things that are also tax deferred, like a health savings account if you have one through your employer, college 529, that have tax advantages. That's where you really want to look normally first when you have a lot of extra money to invest, is what's going to be most tax efficient. So, for example, if you're planning for college, you can put money in something like a 529. If you know you're going to have healthcare expenses, you can do something like a HSA. And if you have a lot more left over, I usually ask people, why not just max out your 401k contributions? It's going to reduce your taxable income if it's traditional 401k. You can put up to 22,500 in your max in your 401k.
Well, hey, question about the Roth IRA. Is there like a set, like, is it something that you need to contribute to every month, or is this like you're saying take a lump sum if you come into some cash or whatnot, and you put that and you invest that into a Roth IRA, or is it possible, like, do you add to it?
So you can work with an advisor, you can set one up yourself. But to answer your questions, however you want to do it, you can do lump sum, or you can do what we looked at earlier on the slide. You can go back and look at the slide. It was saying pay yourself first.
Right.
My advice would be do a dollar cost averaging strategy. If you do have, we'll say $500 left over every month, and you're under the threshold to contribute to a Roth, automatically invest it's a little over $500 every month to get your max contribution for the year, and invest it in an appropriate fund for your age and risk tolerance, which that's what a financial advisor could help you with. But some sort of index fund or something in that sort of set it and forget it strategy where you're not buying individual stocks, you're diversifying. But yeah,
Gotcha.
go into sort of an indexing strategy. So to answer your question, in the grand scheme of things, lump sum versus dollar cost average, it's fairly negligible in my opinion, but I would probably just go for dollar cost average for that automation. Because if you do lump sum, that requires you to think to do it. You probably will find something else you want to do. So I would say do dollar cost averaging, because you're automatically debiting your account and funding your retirement account. So once that's when you want to look at, your Roth, you're potentially maxing out your 401k. And also you can start looking at taxable investments. That's when you can start looking at things like ETFs, which is an acronym for exchange traded funds, which they're just similar to a mutual fund, but they're more tax efficient and good for your taxable investments. So this slide right here is, it's a little bit much, but this is the kind of thing you can talk to your financial advisor about, or a representative. You can talk to me about it, to be specific, if you want to, and I'd be happy to help you. But these are the types of basic investment options. Most people are going to be in the growth or income area. That's where you're going to see most of your 401k plan options are going to be a basic growth and income. And generally speaking, you just want to have a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds that are tailored for your stage of life. The younger you are, the more growth income, the more growth oriented you're going to be. And then the older you get, the more growth and income, even on into income and asset protection you're going to be. And that's just going to change with your age and risk tolerance and your situation. Right now, in terms of financial planning 101, if you have extra cash and it's just sitting in the bank, rates are good now. So whether it's a short-term CD at the credit union, paying a good APY, annual percentage yield, don't have too much. If for example, that if you have more than your emergency fund sitting around, it'd be smart to put it in some of these better interest rates we're seeing right now.
Hey, right now we have a 7-month at 5%. Just
That's right.
put a little shout out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful for super short-term cash. That's a great solution.
Yeah, as little as $500. Can't beat that.
Right. So yeah, this is sort of what we're looking at in terms of the basics. A lot of it is just getting through the first couple steps, make sure you're ready to invest. But that's kind of my main the whole spiel right there. I mean, you go through these steps. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, is I can add this, once you're, if you are at the point where you really are doing your Roth, if you can do one, you're putting all this money in tax efficient spaces, like I mentioned earlier, you're basically you're maxing out your 401k, you're investing everything. The one thing you really want to do along with this, if you do have extra money, is try to get your mortgage paid off. Because just from firsthand experience meeting just many people on a weekly basis who are retiring, it greatly simplifies and de-stresses the scenario when you do not have a mortgage in retirement. Granted, if you've got 3 pensions and Social Security and you're making 10 grand a month just from entitlements, maybe a mortgage is not that big of a deal, but for most folks, it really helps to not have a mortgage. I would prioritize that as well, to like put something towards the principal and have a plan to get it paid off, even if it means downsizing. So I will say that. And another thing is, as you are approaching retirement, and even well before, even if you're in your, mid 30s, early 40s, think about the future, meaning think about what it costs to pay your bills every month. And think about, what if I was just trying to live off of Social Security? Say if I only got $1,500 a month, something like that, $2,000, $1,100 a month, how would I pay my bills? So that's where I'll say this. It's important for everyone to have a retirement income plan, meaning you put all this money in your 401k. Now, what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to, that's really another huge thing. So there are lots of ways you can take all the assets you've accumulated from all the years of having automated money going into savings and investing, and you have built a sizable amount of money for yourself. There's several ways to go about it to turn those assets into income. You can approach it several different ways, but that just sort of depends on your situation, what you're comfortable with, your risk tolerance, your needs for the money. But when you have that plan going into retirement, knowing you're going to get X amount of money or approximately X amount of money to kind of coincide with your Social Security and supplement that, it'll give you a lot more confidence to enter retirement and move forward into that part of your life. So that's when working with someone like me or a trusted financial advisor can really help. When you're just accumulating assets, it's pretty easy because, like I mentioned, you can run sort of index strategies, set it and forget it. It's all about growth. It doesn't matter quite as much. But when you need to be more strategic about how to turn this into income, that's when it's good to reach out to somebody. So if anybody's in that situation and needs advice, wants to have a discussion, more than happy to help. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Matt, if you have any questions, let me know. But that's about all I have for you guys.
Well, this has been great. Yeah. Oh, Elizabeth, go ahead. Well,
I'll have her muted. Hang on a minute. Will you unmute her, Matt?
yeah. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So if we're still on step 1 and we're trying to save up that 6 months, if we have an unexpected expense come up during that process, because this is something I had happen, and I really didn't want to see that number go down because I'm not even a third of the way there.
Right.
Right.
So I put it on a credit card. Is it better to put that on a credit card and keep working towards getting that number in the savings account where it needs to be? Or is it better to just pay it in full with the savings?
if you really think about it, you're, I mean, just to give you an honest answer, it's like you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You could do it either way. You're going to pay a premium, meaning interest on your credit card to do it that way. But I see what you're saying, but basically it would depend on the amount.
Yeah.
I don't, there's really not much need to get into too much specifics here. It would depend on the amount, but say if you're like, you've made some progress, like you've mentioned, you've got several months saved up, for peace of mind. And if you don't have much other credit card debt, it can be okay to put it there for a while if you're going to immediately pay it off.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't have any other credit card debt at the time. I was just,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd also heard you should keep a balance on your credit card for your credit score. I don't know if that's true or not, but
that's not true in my opinion.
okay.
It's not, you're not
Really?
going to, you can keep a good credit score by paying off your balance in full every month.
Okay.
The good thing, the thing, I think the thing about the credit card thing is don't close that credit card out. Once you get it paid off, keep that, because that looks good when you go to apply. Like if you need to do anything, like if you need to buy a house, it shows that you've got this much credit extended to you,
And it shows the average age of your credit lines. So if you have an older credit card and you canceled it and closed it, it would decrease the average age of your credit, and it would potentially most likely lower your credit score by some degree. But yeah, Elizabeth, I think that's fine, because then you still have that true emergency fund that you've already started still there. So I'm okay with that.
Okay. I did have one other question. Is it better to wait until I get the 6 months saved up to start worrying about the Roth, or should I be doing both at the same time?
Well, here's one thing you mentioned to me earlier, that you do not have a 401k plan offered to you at your current job.
Correct.
So I'm going to treat the Roth like your 401k plan. Like, say if you meet the criteria, if you're not above the income limits for that, I'm going to treat your Roth like your 401k. And I'm going to say, go ahead and start that.
Okay.
Because time is of the essence. You got to allow time and compounding interest to work. So you start that part, do just like you would a 401k, 4%, 5% of your income, whatever you can afford, start that. But then everything else goes to build up that emergency fund. And you mentioned there's no credit card debt. So just going about it that way. I would start now.
Okay.
Elizabeth, I think me and you are in the same boat. I think I'm going to try to start finding some ways that I can make some additional money.
Yeah. Me too.
And build.
I mean, there's always the night shift, Matt. As soon as you leave Kentucky, you can go down bartend somewhere.
This is true.
Well, but yeah, it's but yeah, that's I think that's smart. I think if you have questions, Elizabeth, about getting a Roth started, just Matt will give you my number. Feel free to reach out.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll need to do that this week. Like, go ahead and get started on it, because
I'm with you.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Did anybody else have any questions for Fitz? And if y'all do, just let me know. I can unmute you guys. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or anything, man, Fitz, thank you so much for spending the time with us this evening. I appreciate it. I know I've learned some things, and there's some things that I'm going to take from tonight's conversation and start applying it into my own financial life. And this is all this information is complimentary. So I thank you so much, Fitz, for sharing with us tonight, and for all of you that have attended. I hope that you've gotten something out of it for sure. Like I said, I have recorded this for this evening, and I'll send a link out to you guys, and then also it'll have Fitz's information in there of how to get in touch with him, his email address, and telephone number to get in touch. Yeah, man, thanks a lot. Is there anything else before we leave?
Hey, you're welcome, Matt. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
Thank
you're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Y'all take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.